Thanks for joining today. What would you say if I told you that there was a gadget that you could buy that would make taking panoramas, whether it's during the day or during the night, so much easier than a panoramic rotator? Today, I'm going to show you this gadget that could make your panoramic photography so much easier. Now the gadget I'm talking about is called the Syrp Genie Mini 2, and this is it here. It's just a turntable run from a cable to your camera through an app on your phone. The Genie Mini 2 is mainly used when you're doing motion time lapses. You know, as photographers, sometimes you buy something for a specific purpose, and then when you stop doing that sort of photography, you sort of forget about that gadget and you just put it away. That's me with the Genie Mini 2. I bought it because I love doing motion time lapses of the Milky Way and of sunsets. It is much more expensive than just a panoramic rotator. But when I stopped doing astrophotography around 3.5 years ago, I put the Genie Mini 2 into the cupboard and forgot about it. A couple of weeks ago, started cleaning out my cupboard, and right at the back of the cupboard in a bag was the Genie Mini 2. I haven't used it for so long. Turned the app on because it runs off an app. When I was looking through the app, and then I looked and go, hey, one of the things it can do is panoramas. Years ago when I first got it, I had done a few panoramas of the Milky Way with the Genie Mini 2. And the last one that I'd done was at Lake Somerset. So I thought, let's just go outside and let's see the difference between using the panoramic rotator and using the Syrp Genie Mini 2. With the Genie Mini 2, because it runs off an app, it's so easy to do. This is why I wanted to talk about the Genie Mini 2. The only difference that I found is that it's like convoluted. It's like back to front. If you've watched any of my panoramic tutorials, you'll see that I state that it needs a minimum of 30% overlap to get a very good joint. With the Syrp Mini 2, that you've got to think opposite. So if you're thinking 30%, then it's not 30%, it's the opposite of 30%, which is 70%. This is where I found that at the start when I was trying to do panoramas, it just warped my head around, thinking like, hang on my rotator, it's 30%. And when I set this to 30%, I don't have any overlap at all. Just like me, you might be confused about the percentage between the rotator and the Genie Mini 2. Keep watching the video, you will see that when I demonstrate this, everything works out. But understand that on the rotator, although I state 30%, the rotator shows you in degrees. My rotator goes 15, 30, 45, 60. On the Genie Mini 2, it is percentage. 30% on the Genie Mini 2 does not equal 15 degrees. It does get confusing. Bear with me. I will show you this later on in the video. And by the end of the video, you will understand how the Genie Mini 2 works. And once you've used it a couple of times, you'll be able to take panoramas with 1/3 overlap. I will show you this through the app when the camera is on here. Now, I'll put it up here. So we'll plug it all in. Now I'll just turn the app on to show you what the app looks like and how we set this up. Here's the app over here, SYRP. We turn it on. It says create content. We click on create content. We have to connect the app. So turn the Genie Mini 2 on. It's blinking. So now I can just click here, connect. I'm at Black Duck Lagoon to finish off part 2 of this video, how the Genie Mini 2 works out in the field and how all this works automatically. We've already connected the Genie Mini 2. You can see my setup is already done. I'm at 24mm. First thing I'm going to do is to make sure that I'm in focus. I will shut down the autofocus. I normally do this when I do panoramas because I don't want the focusing point to change. Here we are. Panorama configuration, we have sensor size, already stated it's full frame. My aspect ratio is 3.2, focal length is 24mm, and we're in portrait orientation. Now, I'm at 24mm here. If I was at 50mm, I would have to set here the focal length to 50mm, but I'm at 24mm, so we'll go back to 24. Click OK. Now, everything's done. We click OK. Now you can see the little wheel is showing its start. So it's going round and round. This is where I have to set my start point. Now, I'll put the camera in video mode and I'll move it a little bit further to the left here. This will be my start point. I click start. Now you can see the end part is circling. This is where we want the panorama to finish. I'll move it around here. You can see on my camera here that my scene's changing. We've got a path leading down to the other side of the lagoon. And I go, stop a little bit further. There, now I just click and that's it. It's locked. So it's going to start from here, end over there. We click done and it's telling me here I have 5 frames. Remember I was saying that this thing is convoluted. It advises you to start at 40%. So I come down here to these double squares here. Instead of 70, I'll bring it down to 40. It's telling me 5 and we click record. So it takes a photo, moves around to the second point, takes a photo, moves to the next one, takes a photo, moves to the next one, takes a photo, moves to the next one, takes a photo. That's it. Now we just go all the way back. And you can see in these photos here, much overlap. I took 3 panoramas today, 2 with the Genie Mini 2 and 1 with the Panorama Rotator. These panoramas will be displayed at the 8-minute mark, where you'll see the comparison between the Genie Mini 2 panoramas and the panorama taken with the Rotator. I like setting to 70%. We're at 70%, let's start off again. We press record, take the first one, moves to the second one, and look at the trees. You can see that I've got much more overlap. I state that when we do panoramas, you want the same object. Let's say this big tree that was in front of us here, I like to see it 3 times in the panorama. So 3 frames, I want to see that tree 3 times. So that way, any panorama stitching program you use won't have any trouble at all matching your frames. Can you see how easy it is? So much easier than doing it manually. Now the reason I'm really going to love using the Genie Mini 2 instead of my Panoramic Rotator is that on this rotator I've only got 15, 30, 45 and 60. At 15 degrees I can only go to about 30, maybe 35 mils. Any more than that I won't get enough overlap. Everything's set up now and you'll see I've got a 2-second timer delay. So I take a photo, press it. I've got to make sure I don't touch the camera. I'm taking 9 frames. I've worked out that it needs about 9 frames to shoot the same as the 8 frames. So that's it. Can you see how awkward? Now if I want to go back and let's say like, oh, the exposure wasn't right, I've got to make sure I bring it back and I count 9 frames. If I hadn't counted 9 frames, if I come back and go like, whoa, where did I start? I'd have to go back into the photos and look and say, oh, okay, it was these trees here where I started. It is a hassle. So here are the stitched panoramas. So the first 2 panoramas were taken with the Genie Mini 2. The third panorama was taken with the Rotator. This panorama was taken when the Genie Mini 2 was set to 40 degrees. And you can see there's quite a curvature, which shows that there is very little overlap. I'm very surprised that it's stitched up. This panorama was taken at 70%. And you can see there's very little arcing, which represents 8 photos. So this panorama at 40 degrees, there was only 5 photos. If you count the arcs, there is 5 arcs, which represents 5 photos. This one was at 70 degrees, 8 photos, and you can see there's hardly any arcs, which means I would hardly have to do any cropping at all. This panorama was taken with the Rotator and there was 9 photos in here. So you can see again that there's very little arcing. Now, the way that I'd set up the Rotator, the panorama is slightly different to when it was set up on the Genie Mini 2. It was just very hard to get the same framing. Now, to show you how much overlap there is, look at my watermark down here. You can see this is the first photo. On the left, Charles and photography. You can see the second photo here, you can see autography. This shows you how little overlap there is because you can see in the middle and on the right, there is autography. And that shows that there is very little overlap. Now take a look when it was set to 70 degrees. Can you see there is only IY? This shows you a lot more overlap. And also you can see there's very little curvature. It shows you that I've got a very good overlap and I wouldn't have any problems at all stitching. So you can see there is 5 photos that overlap here. The first one, you can see my whole copyright, Charles and Photography. The second one, you cannot see any of the copyright letters. The third, you can see IY. The fourth, you can see Y. And then the fifth, you can see Y. The reason you cannot see any of the copyright in the second image is my fault. I didn't click in the rotator properly, so I had quite a bit more overlap than 15 degrees. And then it settled down to IY, then Y, Y, and all the rest were just Y, 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 which shows that there is slightly more overlap compared to here, 70 degrees on the Genie Mini 2. This is why I stated in the video that when you're using the Genie Mini 2, if you're using 70%, maybe even 60%, you're going to get quite a lot of overlap, and you're going to be able to stitch your panorama no matter which panoramic software you use. This is why I'm saying that the Genie Mini 2, even at $400, is such a good investment if you're really into panoramas, because it just takes all the guesswork out, because you can set the start point, you can set the end point, and you could quickly see how it's going to look like. You don't have to touch the camera. You can say, okay, well, just record. Just give me a view of quickly what it's going to look like. You can say, okay, I want to start from here, then go end, move on the slider to the end point, go beauty. This is what I want. No guesswork. Now, this is where the Syrp Genie Mini 2 really comes in, because you're seeing, as I'm having to move the camera, I've got to hold it, press a button, wait 2 seconds, and then the photo takes. So if there's a lot of movement, let's say you're at the beach, there's waves moving around, you're losing 2 seconds per frame. But on the Genie Mini 2, I can bring it down to around half a second. It's going to take the photos very quickly. You can't do that with the Panoramic Rotator, because if I move, take a photo, move, take a photo, I've got to hold it here, and I'm most likely going to get camera shake. Now, if you're new to panoramic photography, or you want to improve your panoramic photography, whether using the Syrp Genie Mini 2 or just a Panoramic Rotator, I'll put some links below that, if you're new to panoramic photography, will give you a guide of how to take panoramas the proper way. And if you're more experienced and you just want some more advice on how to improve your panoramic photography, I'll put some links in there as well. Thanks for watching. If this video has been of help to you, give it a big thumbs up, stay safe, enjoy your panoramic photography, and I'll see you next time.